with a grateful heart, give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 31. Now Jacob used to listen while Laban's sons kept on complaining, "Jacob has taken over everything our father owns. He made himself wealthy from what belongs to our father." Jacob also noticed that the way Laban had been looking at him wasn't as nice as it had been just 2 days earlier. Then the Lord ordered Jacob, "Go back to your father's territory and to your relatives. I'll be with you." Jacob sent for Rachel and Leah to come out to the field where his flock was and informed them, "I've noticed that the way your father has been looking at us hasn't been as nice as it was just 2 days ago. But my father's God has been with me. You know I've been serving your father with all my heart. Even so, your father has cheated me. He broke our wage agreement 10 times. However, God didn't allow him to harm me." When Laban said, "The speckled ones will be your wages," then all the flock gave birth to speckled ones. Then when he said, "The streaked ones will be your wages," all the flock gave birth to streaked offspring. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. As it was, when it was time for the livestock to breed, I once looked up in a dream, and the male goats that were mating with the flock were producing streaked, speckled, and spotted offspring. Later, the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, "Jacob." "Here I am," I replied. "Look around," he said. "Go ahead, look. All the male goats have been mating with the flock, producing offspring that are streaked, speckled, and spotted, because I've been watching everything that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, the place where you consecrated that stone and made a vow to me. Now get up, leave this territory, and return to your native land." Then Rachel and Leah asked him, "Do we have anything left of inheritance remaining in our father's house? He's treating us like foreigners. He sold us and spent all of the money that rightfully belonged to us. Furthermore, all of the wealth that God has stripped away from our father belongs to us now and to our children. So do everything that God tells you to do." So Jacob got up, seated his children and wives on camels, and drove all his livestock ahead of him, with everything that belonged to him, including the livestock that he had bought and accumulated in Paddan Aram, intending to deliver them to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Meanwhile, Laban had been out shearing his sheep. While he was away, Rachel stole her father's personal idols. Moreover, Jacob had deceived Laban the Aramean, because he had never told him that he was intending to leave. Jacob fled, taking everything that he owned. He got up, crossed the river, and headed to the hill country of Gilead. 3 days later, somebody reported to Laban that Jacob had left, so he took his relatives with him and pursued Jacob. Laban was on the road for 7 days when he finally caught up with Jacob in the hill country of Gilead. That night, God appeared to Laban the Aramean in a dream and warned him, "Be careful what you say to Jacob, whether it's one word good or bad. Meanwhile, Jacob had pitched his tent on the mountain, where Laban had caught up with him. Laban and his relatives encamped on that same mountain in the hill country of Gilead, too. Then Laban asked Jacob, "What did you do? You deceived me, carried off my daughters like you would war captives, ran away from me secretly, and stole from me by not keeping me informed. Otherwise, I could have sent you off with a party and singing, accompanied by a band playing tambourines and harps. As it is, you didn't even allow me to kiss my grandchildren and daughters goodbye. You've acted foolishly. It's actually in my power to do some serious evil to you, but last night the God of your father told me, 'Be careful what you say to Jacob, whether good or evil.' Now, you can go if you must go, because you certainly are longing to go to your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" "I was afraid," Jacob replied. "I thought you might take your daughters from me. Now as to your gods, if you find someone has them in their possession, he's a dead man. Take our relatives as witnesses, search through our belongings, and take whatever belongs to you that's in my possession." But Jacob didn't know that Rachel had stolen the idols. So Laban entered Jacob's tent, Leah's tent, and the tents of the two maidservants, but he didn't find them. Then he left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Meanwhile, Rachel had taken the idols, placed them inside the saddle of her camel, and sat on them. Laban searched through the whole tent, but found nothing. Then Rachel told her father, "Sir, please don't be angry that I cannot stand up in your presence. It's that time of the month." So Laban searched for the idols, but never did find them. Then Jacob got angry and started an argument with Laban. "What have I done?" he demanded. "What's my crime that would cause you to come pursue me so violently? Now that you've searched all my belongings, what did you find that belongs to your house? Set it here in front of our relatives and we'll let them judge between us." Meanwhile, these past 20 years that I've been with you, your sheep and goats never had miscarriages, I never once ate any of the rams from your flock, and whatever was torn by beasts, I never bothered to bring to you. Instead, I bore the losses myself. Even so, you demanded that I provide restitution for anything that was stolen, whether during the day or the night. As it was, I was attacked by drought during the day and by cold at night. I never got any decent rest. I've lived in your house these 20 years, serving 14 years for your 2 daughters and another 6 years for your flocks. During all that time you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the God whom Isaac feared, had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw my misery and how hard I've worked with my own hands, and he rebuked you last night." But Laban answered Jacob, "These women are my daughters. These children are my children. The flocks are mine. In fact, everything that you see belongs to me. But what would I do today to my daughters and the children they have borne? Come, let's make a covenant just between you and me. And let it serve as a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and raised it as a pillar. Then Jacob told his relatives, "Go gather some stones." So they picked up stones and stacked them one on top of the other. Then they had a meal together there by the stack of stones. Laban named the place Jegar-Sahadutha, but Jacob named it Galeed. Then Laban said, "This stack will serve as a witness between you and me today." That's how the place came to be named Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because Laban said, "May the Lord watch between you and me, when we are estranged from each other. If you mistreat my daughters or if you take other wives besides them, though no one is watching us, keep in mind that God stands as a witness between you and me." Look. Laban added, "Here is the stack of stones and here is the pillar that I've set up between you and me. This stack is a witness, and so is this pillar, reminding me not to cross beyond the stack of stones, and reminding you not to pass by the stack in my direction, intending to cause harm. May Abraham's God and Nahor's God judge between us." So Jacob made an oath by his father's fear, offered sacrifices there on the mountain, and called on his relatives to eat some food. So they ate the food and spent the night on the mountain. Early the next morning, Laban woke up, kissed his grandchildren and daughters, blessed them, and then left for home.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 32. As Jacob went on his way, angels from God met him. As he was watching them, Jacob said, "This must be God's camp," so he named that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers ahead of him into the land of Seir, that is, into the territory of Edom, to meet his brother Esau. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my master Esau, your servant Jacob told me to tell you, I've journeyed to stay with Laban and I've remained there until now. I now have cattle, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. I'm sending this message to you, sir, so that you'll show favor to me." Later, the messengers returned to Jacob and reported, "We went to your brother Esau. He's now coming to meet you, and he has 400 men with him." Feeling mounting terror and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, doing the same with the flocks, the cattle, and the camels. Jacob was thinking, if Esau comes to one group and attacks it, then the remaining group may escape. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, O God of my father Isaac, O Lord, you who told me, 'Return to your country and to your relatives and I'll cause things to go well for you.' I'm unworthy of all your gracious love, your faithfulness, and everything that you've done for your servant. When I first crossed over this river, I had only my staff. But now I've become two groups. Deliver me from my brother Esau's control, because I'm terrified of him, and I'm afraid that he's coming to attack me, the mothers, and their children. Now, you promised me that I'm certainly going to cause things to go well with you, and I'm going to make your offspring as numerous as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. Jacob spent the night there. Out of everything that he had brought with him, he chose a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking camels with their young, 40 cows with 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys with 10 male donkeys. He entrusted them into the care of his servants, one herd at a time. Then he told his servants, "Go in front of me, making sure there's plenty of space between herds." To the first group he said, "When you meet my brother Esau, if he asks, 'To whom do you belong? Where are you going? And to whom do these herds belong?' then you are to reply, 'We're from your servant Jacob. The herds are a gift. He's sending them to my master, Esau. Look! There he is, coming along behind us." He issued similar instructions to the second and third group, as well as to all the others who drove the herds that followed. "This is how you are to speak to Esau when you find him. You are to tell him, 'Look! Your servant Jacob is coming along behind us.'" Jacob was thinking, "I'll pacify him with the presents that are being sent ahead of me. Then, when I meet him, perhaps he'll accept me." So the presents went ahead of him, while he spent that night in the camp. Later that night, he woke up, quickly took his 2 wives, his 2 women servants, and his 11 children, and forded the river at Jabbok. He took them across the river, along with all his possessions. And so Jacob was left alone, and he struggled with the man until daybreak. When the man realized that he hadn't yet won the struggle, he injured the socket of Jacob's thigh, dislocating it as he wrestled with him, and said, "Let me go, because the dawn has come." "I won't let you go," Jacob replied, "unless you bless me." Then the man asked him, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he responded. "Your name won't be Jacob anymore," the man replied, "but Israel, because you exerted yourself against both God and men, and you've emerged victorious." "Please," Jacob inquired, "tell me your name." But he asked, "Why are you asking about my name?" And he blessed Jacob there. Jacob would later call that place Peniel, because I saw God face to face, but my life was spared. The sun was rising above Jacob as he crossed over from Peniel, limping due to his wounded thigh. Therefore, to this day the Israelis do not eat the hip tendon that connects to the thigh socket, because he had injured the socket of the thigh where the tendon connected to Jacob's hip.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 33. When Jacob looked off in the distance, there was Esau coming toward him, accompanied by 400 men. So Jacob divided Leah's children, Rachel, and the children of the 2 servants into separate groups. Then he positioned the women servants and their children first, then Leah and her children next, and then Rachel and Joseph after them. Then he went out to meet Esau, passing in front of all of them, and bowed low to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. Then he fell on his neck and kissed him. And they wept. When Esau eventually looked around, he saw the women and the children. "Who are these people with you?" he asked. "The children, whom God has graciously given your servant," he answered. Then the women servants approached, accompanied by their children, and bowed low. Leah also approached, and she and her children bowed low. After this, Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed low. Then Esau asked, "What are all these livestock for?" "To solicit favor from you, sir," Jacob answered. But Esau replied, "I already have so much, my brother, so keep what belongs to you." "Please," Jacob implored him, "don't refuse. If I'm to receive favor from you, then receive this gift from me, because seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have favorably accepted me. So receive my blessing, which has been sent to you, since God has been gracious to me. Besides, I have enough." Because Jacob kept pressing him, Esau accepted the gifts. Then Esau suggested, "Let's set out and travel together, but let me go in front of you." "Sir, you know that the children are frail," Jacob suggested, "and the ewes and cows with me are still nursing their young. If they're driven even for a day, the entire flock will die. So allow yourself to go ahead of your servant while I travel more slowly, letting the herd set their own pace with the children until I arrive to see my lord in Seir." Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." "Why do that?" Jacob asked. "I've already found favor in your sight, sir." So Esau set out that very day back on his way to Seir, but Jacob set out for Sukkah, built a house there, and constructed some cattle shelters. He named the place Sukkah. After Jacob had arrived safely from Paddan Aram, he entered the city of Shechem, which was located in the territory of Canaan, and encamped facing that city. Then he bought a parcel of land for 100 pieces of silver from the descendants of Hamor, Shechem's father. He pitched his tent there, set up an altar, and named it El Elohe Israel.